Bandwidth for this podcast is brought to you by Ideate Software. Be sure to check out all of their great Revit applications designed to increase your productivity.
We are starting the recording of BIM Thoughts. Guess who I'm joined by today? I'm joined by Dana DeFilippi, Carl Storms, and the bad monkey himself, Mr. Konrad. Welcome, everyone.
Well, thank you.
Welcome.
Hello.
Hello. We're all there. So welcome. Dana, what have you been up to?
What have I been up to? Well, it's been getting cold over here in DC area.
Yeah, it's getting cold here in Vegas, too.
Well, that's relative, I suppose.
It's 58 degrees Fahrenheit.
It was supposed to snow the other day in DC.
Snow? It snows in DC?
It snows in DC. Sometimes we have blizzards.
Oh, I don't think I could make it in a blizzard.
But if you guys have paid attention on Instagram, where Carl is so wonderful and posts about our podcast,
Yeah.
you may notice that I craft things.
I don't even have Instagram, Facebook, or anything installed on my phone anymore. I have gone off the social on the phone.
Why'd you get off the social, if I may ask?
I got off the social because I was finding myself getting more and more upset at the stupid people on the
Stupid
Facebook.
people.
And
Because I've gone off the social because I can't focus. It drags me in. It glues me to the screen, and I can just keep scrolling through.
Yeah.
And then I find myself like 10 minutes later, I've been scrolling for 10 minutes, and there's nothing. I've been wasting my time. I just have to get off. I had to uninstall all of them. Stupid people don't even bother me that much, but just wasting my time.
And you know what I've noticed getting off of Facebook? I don't get Amazon or Google ads anymore for things I mention out loud.
For things you mentioned out loud, is that a conspiracy theory? As in,
like
Alexa's listening in on
it listens in, and it's like, oh, okay, you're interested in Phillips screwdrivers, so let's show you a bunch of different Phillips screwdrivers.
Is that proven, or is that still a conspiracy? Because I remember there's maybe I misread this, but internet told me that there was some people at Amazon listening into conversations and making fun of people that they got themselves fired for. So
yeah,
that was
probably.
real.
I don't know, but as soon as I uninstalled Facebook from my phone, that stopped.
So how do you know what to buy then?
I don't know what to buy. That's the problem.
See? There you go.
I buy too much.
You don't get pointed marketing ads. Like, that's what do you get?
No. I already have an Amazon problem. They come to my house like every day.
Likewise.
I'm like, oh, I need one of those. It's just too easy because when you're on Prime, you don't have to combine orders for free shipping.
True story.
Especially the one click buy now. I mean, that you just swipe to buy. I mean, it's just too easy.
Yeah, I don't do that part, but because I don't want to accidentally buy something. I mean, I'm not an animal. I'm not a bad monkey.
Not a bad monkey.
Not a bad monkey.
Well, Conrad, define yourself. I stole the line.
Look at that. I'm proud of you.
This is a tough one.
It is.
What kind of parameters should I define myself with?
Any context you'd like. However you'd like to define yourself. That's what we want to hear. Who is Konrad Sobon?
Most recently,
the quarantine's changed us all. You know.
Yeah, the quarantine.
The epidemic. It's made us new people, really.
For me, it actually doubled up because the quarantine started, and I had my daughter. So my daughter was born at the end of December around Christmas. She's a Christmas baby, and then January was when everything kind of changed for everyone. We started hearing about COVID. So she's not only a COVID baby, but she's also a Christmas baby. And I don't know how many more there's going to be added to this. I have a feeling there's going to be some sort of long-term side effects for all the COVID babies. being locked in a house for a
Yeah.
year at least. There's gotta be
I
something to it.
I was watching a YouTube episode by Wheezy News. This guy in Wisconsin or he's in the Midwest. And they're watching 25 Christmas movies that they haven't seen that are supposedly good. And they were discussing how their 4-year-old, because of lockdown, doesn't want to go outside or do anything or go to the store or she's like happy and content just staying home.
Well, they're
Which is
happy and content to stay home, or are they like they're just bombarded with information about like how bad things are and you're gonna die if you
no,
go out there, and they're just
she's
scared?
just content staying home. I don't think she's scared. It was more of a like, hey, let's go to Target or let's go to this, and kids get excited because they want to go to Target and see the toys. She's like,
Yeah.
I don't want anything. Like, what do you want for Christmas? I don't know.
Boy,
Where
some
before
tokens
you
for
would,
some tokens for our Fortnite.
yeah, before they would ask for token for Fortnite. Now they're because they're
I
on
didn't even
Apple, they
realize
can't
you
get
can
it.
actually.
So
I didn't even realize, but you can actually buy those as like gift cards, and they come as actual physical things.
yes, yes, the physical gift cards are still a thing for digital stuff. You don't have to buy a gift card for.
Yeah, and I bet they're gonna be extremely popular this Christmas since all of the
Yeah,
just your Amazon buying spree might take a hit because you're gonna have to
right.
wait for the next 2 months to get something.
Probably. Oh no, I don't think it'll take a hit though.
Oh no, mine
They'll
already
keep on
did.
coming.
I was getting. So Dana was asking to define myself, so now I'm kind of stepping. So I already said that I'm a dad now, and being a dad means that you do dad things. So
Right.
so I've been not emailing, it's mailing Christmas cards to my friends. And
Wow.
another
You should
dad
have
thing
bought
that
your Christmas cards from me. I make Christmas cards.
you make custom Christmas cards. I did
Well,
not know that.
that's where I was going at the beginning, where he was asking about social media and Instagram. On my Instagram, you can see the stuff I make, and I'm actually doing an art show where I sell my Christmas cards.
That's wonderful.
Oh wow.
But I always send Christmas cards as well because I love getting fun things in the mail. I think that's amazing, Conrad, that you send things in the mail. I think more people should send things in the mail.
Well, I'm probably one of the few people who likes to lick postage stamps.
Well, don't get envelope seals. Those also come with my cards.
There's a limit. There's a limit to that, though. I got myself a little dish with water and started.
Yeah.
I couldn't do 40 of them. I had to use my finger for after
Right.
a while.
When your tongue starts sticking to the top of your mouth, you know you have licked enough stamps.
Yeah.
So have you got the dad jokes figured out yet?
Oh no dad jokes for me yet.
Oh well, they come naturally.
I hope so. As I get older, I'll probably pick up a few.
Yeah, you'll get it, and then as soon as your daughter rolls her eyes, you know you got a good dad joke out.
Yeah, all about embarrassing young ones.
She's a little too young still.
She's a little bit too young for that, so you got time to practice.
Oh yeah. She still laughs at everything. So, but what I was gonna say, another death thing that I had to do this year was decorate the Christmas decorations.
Yeah.
And decided to get some Christmas lights from Amazon, but unfortunately they estimated the delivery to be somewhere mid February. So that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, no, that's not gonna happen this year. So what's new in the world of Dynamo?
Oh, I wouldn't know. That's probably
You're a bad monkey, aren't you?
bad. I don't know about monkey. I'm actually bad at keeping up with things.
Okay.
Too much work will do that too. That's part of the reason why I got off the socials. I just couldn't focus and actually get the work that I needed to get done. So I did literally got myself off. So I used to be part of my like morning routine. I'll wake up in the morning, not wake up, but like once I get to the office, I would
Yeah.
jump in on the Dynamo forum and
Hmm.
poke around things and check out the podcasts and blog posts and whatever else was out there in the Dynamo universe. I don't do that anymore. I'm sorry to say this, but it's been a while, and the questions on the Dynamo forum got a little stale.
Oh.
So I stopped venturing in there. Unfortunately, I know I sound like an old man.
No, you go to where it excites you. If the Dynamo forums stop exciting you, then not going there anymore. It's not the Dynamo forum's fault. It's not your fault. It's not where you are today.
I do have to admit, Dynamo's moved beyond that original kind of beginner phase, which was super exciting because everything was new and everyone was on the
Right.
forum asking, and every question was basically something new that we had to figure out, build a package for, or try to liaise with Autodesk or whatnot to get some answers for it. But in the beginning, yeah, it's like every question was a challenge. Every question was something new. And now it's like you go on the forum and every question's been asked about 100 times already. It's just
Yeah.
like, I don't want to be that guy that just pastes links to answers already from the other. So I just stopped going.
You're gonna have to develop a forum bot that looks at the question and automatically answers it based on what was already answered.
The funny thing is, probably majority of those are probably answered by me. I did have a good run at the forum for a while,
Yeah,
so
right.
I still get whenever I talk to people that actually go on there. They still every now and then they'll tell me, it's like, dude, every question I ever Google up, your name comes up. I'm like, yeah, I used to not have a life.
Yeah, but now you have a life.
I like to think so. At least a balanced one. I don't know, not the previous life, but the previous jobs were a little less balanced, a little bit more work.
Yeah. So tell me about your job today.
It's a little bit more balanced with other things, mainly because it's fun. It's fun to hang out with the fam. Just so I usually just get up in the morning, get some whenever my daughter actually wakes up. I stopped setting my clock 2 years ago. It's funny. It's funny because if she has a good night, she'll wake up. She'll wake up around 7, which is perfect for me. Get her breakfast, fix myself some breakfast, play around with her for a little bit, and then I'll go work. So that's usually finish in the afternoon. Same thing, just hang out with her a little bit for a few hours and then put her to sleep. That's kind of my day. 7 days a week nowadays.
Wow. Well, Dana, I bet you are just itching to ask a question.
Well, before the podcast, when we were actually waiting for Bill, which is pretty typical,
Yeah.
Conrad and I were chatting about, just his influence on Dynamo and, his amazing contribution, which is Archilab, right? And he was talking a little bit about, how he maintains it. And I think our audience would love to hear about what goes into that. What goes into your package maintenance? Do you respond to the API changes as well as feedback that you get from users?
Yeah. So like at the least, like if you want to maintain a package, you probably want to respond to. If this was like literally bare bones minimum that you have to do, that would be responding to the API changes between Revit versions, and
which in that in itself is pretty substantial, right? I mean, 2020 to 2021 was a pretty big jump in terms of API.
There was a little bit. It depends. So it never comes as a surprise. So just put it this way, because of how Autodesk rolls with they, at least if they're gonna remove something out of the API or make a big change, they usually give you a 2-year runway. So it's definitely not a surprise. Like with units, were pretty big changes around that, but we knew about it for years. but maintaining that, if all I had to do was maintain from year to year, it's not really a whole lot of work. But I did make a choice, which is probably a little bit different than what most package managers do, which most people will maintain a single file, like a single DLL, single binary file that the package goes into for all of the versions. I decided to build different version for every version of Revit because it just makes it easy for me to debug against different versions of Revit. So that means that I have to build every time I release a package version, I have to build it for 2017 through 2022 at this point, which is a little bit more work on that front. So I don't always. That's why I don't always release all of the versions at the same time. So I started doing this thing when I just release. Whenever I make any changes, I'll just release a version for whatever Revit I was in actively. Sorry for all the to all the other people. So some versions of Revit might have newer stuff than some other versions might not. It's just me being lazy. I'm sorry, it happens. But yeah,
Well,
but
that's
that's
more of a reason for people to stay up to date, right?
yeah. It's I mean you can ask all. You probably had other guys that developed and maintain Dynamo packages. It's a little bit of work. So
It's a lot of work.
same thing for end users. Just keeping up with that stuff is it's not easy. That's really I don't in my day-to-day job. Dynamo's kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit because it's a great sandbox for people to play in. I don't recommend this as the company-wide production level deployment tool. It's just I know Dynamo people are gonna hate me for saying this, but it's just not it's not good. There's some tools out there that made it a little bit better, like Orchestra. It just makes package management versioning a little bit easier and the script versioning management a little bit easier for sure. So kudos to those guys. But overall, it's just not production level tooling that I will recommend for companies to get into. So, and then you were Dana, you were asking about what other stuff goes into it. So I usually get comments and people reach out to me through email. People reach out to me. Since Archilab is open source and the source code's on GitHub, people reach out to me through there as well. They ask me questions on forums, on Twitter, LinkedIn, you name it. People will find a way to complain about something that's broken. So that usually goes into it as well. I've been a little bit more. I've been on the slow side responding to requests and things like of that nature. More a little bit better probably with fixing issues as opposed to adding new stuff. And then another thing, like probably the most at this point, the biggest amount of time that will make me put effort into the packages is probably when I have a client. I do work as a consultant, so whenever I have a client that actually wants me to do some development on the Dynamo side of things, eventually all of that stuff ends up in Archilab because I maintain it anyways. So it's just easier for clients, and they have it installed for the most part anyways. So it's just easier for me to roll any custom stuff that they need in directly into the package and then just publish it up, and it's been working pretty good. So I don't know how other consultants do it, but I used to deliver for Dynamo consulting especially, I used to deliver like a one-off package just with custom stuff that I've made for a given client. But then you have to maintain all of these different packages for all different clients, and it was just a hassle. So I started rolling it directly into Archilab, and it's been good ever since.
So that leads to my next question to tie nicely into Dana's question about what goes into keeping a package up to date. One of the things that's a complete can of worms, anybody does it differently, but the versioning. And you have a very unique versioning when you release an update to a package. Could you explain your versioning method so those out there can understand the 2022.212.2821 as an example?
Yes. So this is completely broken. So typically typically you would version thing. There's a versioning method called semantic versioning. That usually consists, every version number will consist of 3 main parts of the versions, so which is a major, minor, and then the build version, I think. And that's your typical versioning. Microsoft has tools built around it, and all sorts of other software providers that have tooling built around comparing versions that are structured like this. So this is a typical industry standard way of numbering things. And we started doing, well, when Dynamo first came out and I started building the packages, that was not on my within the things that I knew about. So the versioning schema or the method for versioning, I just kind of picked randomly without knowing what it should really be. And the reason I say it's broken is because the problem with the versioning number, with the version numbers set up for Dynamo packages, that they force you that every single next release, every subsequent release has a higher version number. So you've mentioned numbers like 2020 is the first kind of section in that version number. I started doing that based on the Revit version that the package was. Well, back in the days, it didn't make sense. It was just the latest Revit version that I was on. So I thought this was like the Revit version that the package is going to get built against. But when I switched over to releasing different versions of packages for different Revit versions, I can't have 2017 released after I've already released 2020. The version would not be calculated as higher. So I'm stuck releasing everything with 2020 or 2021 or 2022, whatever the highest number usually is. So it's just a year at this point. It doesn't mean anything. The next 3 digits in there were the digits for Dynamo version that the package was built against. So originally it made sense because there were some breaking changes between like Dynamo 9 versus Dynamo 1.3 or whatnot. So this would give users a good indication which version you're supposed to be downloading. But now that I maintain 5 different versions of packages for different versions of Revit, and Dynamos now ships with Revit, and you're basically locked into whatever version of Revit plus Dynamo you have. Then these versions change for version of Revit. So again, because of the requirement that every version has to be higher for the next release of the package, I can't make these reflect accurately. So this number at the moment is just whatever it was the latest version of Dynamo that I ever tested against. And yeah, that's a little unfortunate. And then the final last 4 digits is the actual number. Like if anyone ever pays attention to versioning, the last 4 digits in Archilab is actually where you want to pay attention to, which is it's going to be 4 digits. First 2 digits is the actual version of the package. So 28 is the latest, and then the last 2 digits is the version of Revit that the package was built against. And this because of that Dynamo requirement that every version has to have a higher number. This is the only way for me to release 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and so on the same day, right after each other, and then just release the next one. So I literally only toggle the last 4 digits, and last 2 digits is the version of Revit. So my packages are built against specific Revit versions, so people have to pay attention to that because some nodes might disappear between different versions of the packages, between different versions of Revit. That's because changes in the APIs and whatnot. So that's really it. Pay attention to the last 4 digits. That's your build number and the version of Revit that the build is for.
So essentially what you would do is you would go to the archilab.net on the package manager, and if you're using Revit 2020, you would look to the last 2 digits, you would look for a 20, and whatever the highest number is before that, that would be the version you would download as the latest version. So for 20 right now would be 2120.
Yeah, that's probably accurate.
Yeah.
And just yesterday, I think the latest version of that I released was for Revit 2021.
Yeah.
So that version number would be, I think, 2821, the last 4 digits.
We have a winner. So that makes sense. Obviously, there's some convoluted things in there that make the system like it is, and as anything else, as you're learning as you go along, the versioning, the way that people do versions change. I know a lot of people use just some variation of the date that it's released, just because the same idea that Dynamo makes you have a higher number after that, so that you put something in place. But I think that's helpful. The people now we have it out there in the internet, so everyone knows. Uh, but the fact that you actually take the effort to build against uh, 5 versions of Revit, you don't go back to 17.
So there's a couple. So back in 2017, I think 2017, 18 maybe. This was the same version of. It was the same version of Dynamo.
Everyone
That
could download it independently. It wasn't released with Revit specifically.
yeah. So I don't really for 17, 18. I don't think I actually have to build separate versions like the APIs or haven't really been changing back then, and the versions of Dynamo engine that underlies them wasn't different, so you could actually line those up. I think it was like version 203 at the time, something like that. So everything after that, they started doing some significant changes, and I started building against specific version of Revit just to line them up. This is like, I mean, the easiest the just the difference between those for end users that they will be able to spot is if you have a version specific, like if Dynamo package is built against a version specific version of Revit, first thing that you're gonna notice right away is that little warning sign when you open up Dynamo. When the package is just the same package is built for all the versions of Revit, whoever's building it has to choose which Revit APIs to build against. So they usually build against like 2022, which is the latest. And when you open up, let's say Revit 2021 with that version of Dynamo package, then it's going to complain that you have a higher API and whatnot. There's going to be conflicts. So that warning window is going to have stuff in it. But if you're building against specific versions, you should not be seeing that kind of stuff. So that's a cool benefit of doing that, even though it's more work.
Well, we appreciate the extra work to make that happen, and to shift gears just a little bit because that's what we do here. Um, I'm gonna say it was, and if I go to the internet, it can tell me exactly. In November, you hosted one of the master classes for the AEC Tech Symposium, and I was lucky enough to get a seat in the class. They were doing it virtually this year, so I was able to partake from Calgary. The API journey from beginner to master in one course. It was 6 hours of awesomeness. I must say that your teaching style is no BS. You speak like it is, and you know the good, the bad, the ugly. You put it out there, and it's a great way to learn. I've also seen that they've now released those symposiums onto the World Wide Web through YouTube on the Core Studios or Thornton Tomasetti. Is that how we say that?
Mm-hmm.
On
Yep.
their YouTube page. So I don't know where the question is here. There's got to be a question here somewhere. But the point is it was a great class, whether you've used the Revit API or not. A great introduction, helpful if you have some background into it before you got into it. But any thoughts on sort of teaching a 6-hour long class like that, and what did you get out of virtually teaching 80 people in an environment like that?
I got a sore throat out of it.
It was a lot of talking, I'll give you that.
Is that a dad joke? So yeah, 6 hours of talking into a microphone, and yeah, it was definitely one of the longer classes that I've done on my own, because I used to teach back in the days. Acadia would have like a 3-day workshop, so I would do those 3-day workshops, but there was always somebody else in the class. Those were the physical days when you can actually have people sit in the class. at the table, and there will be at least two of us. I used to teach those. I think Acadias I did with. So I used to do those with Nate, and so Nate would just walk around and we would switch, and he would teach a piece of it, and then I'll walk around and answer people's questions and try to help them out. So you kind of get a break from it. But teaching a 6-hour course in front of just talking into a computer when you can't really get somebody to help you out with the class with questions, it's tough. There's some good and there's some bad. Like you can get more people in on the class, for sure. I think I never like physically when we had regular workshops that I would teach. I would always try to tell the organizers to cap it at around 15 people maybe tops, because you want to try to give people the best possible experience, and that's only if you can. You're trying to make sure that people are keeping up with whatever you're talking about, whatever you're teaching or showing. So and you want to be able to have enough time to answer the questions and do some one-on-one sessions and catch them up if they kind of fall behind. So you can't really get that with an online course. So there's some good and there's some bad with teaching an online course. I have a feeling that it was tough for people to keep up with it. I've probably set myself up for that because titling the course as from the beginner to the master and trying to do this in 6 hours, I've probably set myself up for a little bit more than we can actually chew on in 6 hours. So it was a little tough. We didn't get through all of the stuff that I wanted to go through. But for anyone out there, I think I posted all of the resources to a GitHub account. So anyone who wants to give that a try, the videos are on TT's YouTube channel, and then they probably have links to the GitHub page where you can download it and kind of redo the class from there. So you should be able to do this at the quiet of your home.
Yes, they do, and we do. I'll make sure we put the links in the show notes. And as someone that was there and took it live, I got about 45 minutes in and got completely lost because my Visual Studio updated halfway through, and I couldn't get it to go. So
Yeah.
I went back and went do it again. But I liked the idea or the way that as you were going through, and as people started asking questions, because for a virtual class, especially after maybe the first hour, there was a lot of questions, like not as in sort of random, where do I find my button, but what if we did this, or how if we tweak that, or I'm not seeing this, but I'm getting this. And you did a great job of answering it again in that sort of tough virtual environment. But it kind of changed what the app was going to become and what we were making. And even though we didn't get to the end as you had hoped, there was great value in going through it and seeing that, walking it through. And I think the idea that you also included your sample file, so what the finished product was going to be in your eyes, the fact that you have that and you have what we did on the thing to follow along in the video. Again, I highly recommend anyone that's interested in learning a little bit about the Revit API to take a look, and again, check in the show notes to walk through it. So, and absolutely, when the 2022 version of the AEC Tech comes out again, take a look at some of those classes, because it's definitely high value learning for very 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 little money. So yeah, definitely check it out next year. And that's my shameless plug for you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I enjoy teaching. It's been a while since I had a chance to teach. Actually, one interesting story. Maybe I think it's an interesting story, but I don't know if it's going to be interesting for a lot of people. But I just moved back to Chicago around when the pandemic was kicking off. So I used to live in New York, and then we moved back to Chicago, and this is where I went to school for architecture, IIT. So shout out to any IIT students out there. But one thing that I wanted to say is that because of this pandemic, and I haven't been able to go out and teach, and I kind of wanted to figure out a way to wiggle my way into IIT, maybe teach a course there. So that's kind of my goal for the future. I need to figure out a way to get in touch with some of the I don't know if I can. I don't know if any of my former teachers are still there, or if any of my former professors are still teaching there. I probably need to get in touch with them and see if there's interest in this kind of skill set or this kind of course to be taught at IIT. How do you guys with the schools? I don't know. Any of you guys teach at schools? Do you run any courses, workshops at universities? Is there any appetite for any of that kind of stuff?
For university classes or for people to take them?
Yeah, actual university classes with universities. Because I remember when I was going to school, there was zero. Like at least at the school I was at, IIT, unfortunately, sorry to rain on them, but there was very little like technology focus. We used to draft by hand and actually get penalized if somebody found out that you drafted something in CAD or some other digital software. So I just have a feeling that maybe 10 years later, there would be some appetite. So I kind of want to see where they at with that. But how about other schools? Is this better?
I found that the community college systems are really open to Revit and higher level coding types of
Would
classes.
agree.
Yeah, I would agree as well. That's where whenever I've taken classes that weren't at the vendor or the reseller world, it's been at the community college because they seem to have the classes I was interested in.
I would actually say the same thing about my alma mater, Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University. It's a
Mhm.
mouthful, which is why we say Virginia Tech. And they they would do the same thing. They basically wouldn't let you do anything that was
Yeah.
hand drafted or hand drawn, watercolored, those types of things.
This is tough days. Our first 2 years was completely manual.
Right.
Still gives me sweats at night.
But I feel it's more Rhino, right? It's more Rhino and Grasshopper. So Conrad, you should get in there and start teaching some Revit API.
Well, I'm not really. I don't really care whether it's Revit, Dynamo, or Rhino, or Grasshopper, or SketchUp, whatever people want to use. What I was more interested in is kind of figuring out a way to get people into the mindset of um, you can do this better.
I know that there are a bunch of computational design programs that are sprouting up all over the place.
Yeah. Some of the top universities will have that, like MIT's, Harvard's. They will definitely have that. In New York, I remember when I used to work at Grimshaw, we would get people from Pratt. They had a kind of digital program there for computational designers. So a lot of kids coming out of there would come in with some skills. Um, I just remember that IIT was kind of behind on that. I don't know how they're doing nowadays.
Well, reach out to your local users group. They'll know someone to get in contact to at the community college or at IIT or.
I figured I would just walk in.
Yeah, exactly.
Does it work that way? You just walk
Why
in
not?
and just waltz in and be like, "Hey, I want to teach." I don't know what it is, but I just enjoy teaching. So this just sounds like an outlet for me. That's why I brought it up. But especially
Well,
with the pandemic,
I was
it's
going to
been.
applaud you because coming up with a 90-minute session data set is very difficult. So I can only imagine what it looked like creating a 6 hours long course of session information and data sets. I mean, that must have been a pretty hefty undertaking.
Yeah. Well, so 6 hours is not. So I mentioned Acadia teaching a 3-day, 8-hour a day workshop. This was Dynamo workshops that we were teaching, so that was a pretty big lift. I would say this much, trying to prepare content for 3 days, and then teach it. That was rough. So 6 hours wasn't really that bad compared to that. These were the longest workshops I ever taught, the 3-day sessions. But I think people actually get the most out of those. Because masterclass, when TT was organizing this, they reached out and they were asking whether I want to teach a 3-hour kind of morning or afternoon session, or do a 6-hour full course. And I said, as much as it sounds like it's going to be a lot of work to do a 6-hour one, but you're not going to learn anything in 3 hours beyond like the basics that you can get from like any intro video out there on YouTube. So yeah, the longer the courses or workshops are for anyone out there that's organizing these, even for companies when they bring in consultants or third parties to organize training, if you can do 2-3 days and kind of immerse people into it, then that's a much better learning. People take away a lot more than they would from a couple hours on YouTube or somewhere like something like that.
So I would love to hear about your coding experience. I mean, after saying I had gone to a college that wasn't necessarily as versed in technology or on the technology side of things, did you start coding after the fact or maybe beforehand?
Well, I like to tell people that I would have probably ended up being some sort of software developer, regardless of my architectural background, because coding really started, for me at least, it really started when I was a teenager back in high school, and back in Poland, even before my high school days here in the US. But back in Poland, we started when I was a freshman in high school, sophomore in high school. A friend of mine and I were coding up just starting kind of dabbling around in HTML and building websites and just coding up stuff. And our teacher kind of realized that we're getting a little bored learning how to fire up a computer. And we used to have classes when like a what are they called these days, like a computer class, like computer science class. And they would just teach you how to fire up Word and how to edit the text document and whatnot. And my buddy and I were a little ahead of the game because we were building websites at that time and doing all sorts of stupid crap like installing Trojan viruses on computers and then making fun of people. Just teenage stuff. But that like right then, if I stay in Poland and my parents didn't pick up and move to US, I probably would have gone to computer science college, and that's what my buddy did, and I probably would just do the same thing. So this is a funny thing, probably a tangent here, but it's funny how people choose what they want to study. It has so much to do with their current environments, because I found myself when I was back in Poland, and if when I was 14 or 15, if you ask me what I want to study and where I want to go to college for, my answer would have been computer science at that time, because that was kind of where my friends were into, what we were doing. And fast forward a few years later when we moved to US, and all of a sudden I was working construction over the summers. And this is like, the community here, I'm Polish. So the community here is very much into construction. And all of a sudden someone asked me what I want to study, and it's like architecture. It has nothing to do with everything that I've done before or was interested in before. So that flipped on the dime, and that's how I ended up in architectural school.
Well, what a beautiful pairing of the two, right? Construction and an interest in coding and in software.
Yeah. So then it was like once I got out of architectural school and started doing architecture and practicing architecture, I realized that there's technology involved with this, and technologies and computers and programming is a way of doing architecture and delivering buildings. That was like a no-brainer for me. I just naturally gravitated towards that and switched over. And there is no hiding this, probably. People in architecture generally make less money. I'm sorry to say this. I'm sorry to break this to people. They get paid less than people in architecture with programming skills.
Right.
It's just that's just another thing that was, for a little while. It's probably not going to be a popular opinion, but for a little while when I was in architecture, I thought I was, it's like you're young and you're, enjoying and kind of thinking of yourself like you're going to change the world and whatnot. And then after a few years, you realize that you got to work to make money and support your family. And it's just not going to work for me. So I figured out a different way to make a living. So that was really part of it too.
Well, and it's awesome that you have a passion for teaching as well. So what, three wonderful passions that come together and give us Conrad. I think that's an amazing definition of Conrad. The teacher, the architect, the software enthusiast, right? Coder.
Yeah,
All wonderful
that sounds
things.
about it. I would also
And
throw.
dad.
I do. I do. I get bored with things. I get bored with things fast, so that list is probably a lot longer than just the three things that you've mentioned. I do get interested with other things, and then disinterested with them pretty quickly. So, but these three are kind of the longest with me, so that's a pretty good description as well.
Well, outside of coming up with session data sets and, teaching, managing your packages, how would you say you spend your free time?
Well, yeah, like weekends are pretty packed with kid activities. That's one thing that changed a lot, and we were expecting another one at the end of January. So this is gonna keep me busy on with the free time. But every now and then I do one thing
So get your
that's kind
package
of
requests in now, people.
yeah, get your package requests in. Yeah. COVID babies all over the place. So if you guys need anything, get it in before end of January. After that, I'll probably disappear and fall off the grid. I got into woodworking recently, which is another one of the things they picked up in architectural school. So it wasn't a complete waste of time, I guess.
See, I had a feeling it was going to be something like that. I feel like most of the people we bring on here love 3D printing or, something of the like. But I think that's a wonderful way to wrap up this episode of BIM Thoughts. Do you have any last comments or last thoughts you'd like to share with our audience, Conrad?
um, no, I'm good. I'm good. If you, yeah, I feel like I've talked for a little too long, anyways.
No such thing. It's been exciting hearing you chat. And just before we end it off, my last question to you is: you talked about you sort of used to be into like websites and all sorts of things, but if you had your druthers or your choice of anything, what language or coding language would you use all the time?
This changes. This changes with whatever I'm working on. So I don't really have a. I probably do the most work in C# these days, just in general on the .NET side of things. So that's the preferred language there. But I don't really mind jumping in and out of Python or JS or any other language that I might need for work for whatever. And there's a million different frameworks and languages that you can be working with. It's kind of like riding a bike. Once you learn one of them, you will be good forever. So first one for me was Python. So I tell people learn Python, um, and then once you get into that mindset, once you figure that one out, you're gonna be fine. People ask this question quite a lot, actually.
That what I was going to say is if you, I've done some C sharp. I've done a little bit of Python, playing with JavaScript right now, and I find each time I try to pick up a new one, it gets a little bit easier because the general principle is similar. The language is a little different, but the idea is very similar. So the second, third, fourth time, it gets a little bit easier.
Yeah. So my argumentation is not really so much around which syntax is easier or whatnot. It's usually around the fact that if you're in the AEC industry, like we were, and you're looking to learn something, you kind of want to be the most flexible. You want to learn something that's the most flexible language out there for the AEC, and that's always, in my opinion, been Python because you got the Python script editor in Rhino, you got the Python components in Grasshopper, you can do Python through PyRevit. There was a Python shell at some time in Revit. There is a Python component in Dynamo, so you can use that language and um, all over the place, all over the ecosystem. So if you were to learn that, then you're kind of good to go with a bunch of other places. And then if you really want to step up your game, and just because AEC is really on the .NET side of things, Python is not that useful. And I know Essen's probably gonna he's throwing up his hands right now and screaming. I mean, the PyRevit creator, he's probably mad at me right now for saying this, but it's just not. I think something that's .NET or easier to write code in .NET is a better choice there. So people like VB, people like C#, whichever one you prefer. I don't have a preference.
All right, so you heard it here first. Learn a language, any language, but if you don't know which one to pick, start with Python, Konrad said.
Yeah, that'll work.
And Hassan would tell you that all of his code comes along with PyRevit, so it's definitely something you can piece apart and take a look at.
Yes, and well, so I did take it apart to an extent. I usually dive into these things when I get consulting engagements these days. So I had a peek under the hood of his libraries for PyRevit, and it's never just because you're on the .NET environment, you can't really entirely 100% write it in Python. So there's some .NET code in there as well, in C#, compiled code to handle some of the infrastructure behind executing Python code.
Well, thank you again, Conrad, for your time, taking time away from your family and all your other wonderful activities that give our community such great tools.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me, and hope we can do this again in the future.
Absolutely.